All right, all right. It's Clear Vision Wednesday time. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I'm the creator of the Natural Clear Vision Method. And today I have a really special guest. I'm very, very excited to have her share her experience and her story with you. And before I bring her on, I just wanted to, so the topic today is the do's and don'ts of vision improvement. And what I like about my guest today, she's not a vision teacher. She's actually somebody who's improving her eyesight naturally. And so she's going to share with us today things that she did that didn't work, things that she is doing that are working. And so let me bring her on. I'm Chaniece. Hold on, give me 1 second to bring you on. Hey, welcome.
Hey, hi there.
So first of all, thank you so much for getting up, because you're in China, right? And it's like what, 3 a.m. for you?
It's 3 a.m. here.
So we really, really appreciate you doing this. I know this is not the best thing for vision improvement to be sleep deprived, but I know this is a one-time thing. So thank you so much for being here today. So tell us a little bit about your story. Like, how did you get into vision improvement?
So when I first discovered vision improvement, I was probably about 16 years old. And at the time, I was kind of just questioning everything at that point in my life. And I found it was Relearning to See by Thomas Quackenbush, if I remember correctly. I think a lot of people who might be a little familiar with natural vision might know about this book, because it was like a very, very thick book. So I did some of the things in that book, but at that time in my life, I didn't really know about Dr. Bates. I didn't know about the Bates method and some of these really simple techniques. I was kind of just trying out everything. I mean, I remember at one point there was something called I think it was called fogging, and you would take reading glasses. And the idea was supposed to be that you're taking plus lenses to kind of help reduce your minus lenses. So I would just be walking around with like reading glasses on all day. It was very strange if you met me when I was 16. But anyway, so
I'm curious. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but so that's actually called, optometrists do that. So it's basically the idea that you put the opposite lens, so you are nearsighted, and for you, a plus lens would be basically a 1 diopter plus lens would make your nearsightedness 1 diopter worse. So I think the idea is that you make it worse so that when you take it off, suddenly things fall into place. So I'm curious, did that make any difference for you? Did that work, or was it?
It did make a little bit of a difference. Like a lot of the things I did was it made like little changes. Like I remember having a clear flash by doing kind of walking around outside and noticing movement. So I was like, oh, okay, some of this stuff, I'm going to keep going with it. But I never got it wasn't like a progression. It was sort of just like, all right, clear flash. And then, months later, okay. So, so I don't want to say I gave up. I just couldn't really, I didn't know about all the wonderful natural vision coaches that I know about now. I would have loved to have known about all of you all back then. I remember I hired this one woman for like $60 for an hour once, because she was the only person I could find in my area. And she just kind of had me walk around her house and was like, look at this, and relax your eyes on this. And then she gave me some blueberries out of her garden. It was a very nice experience, but it didn't do anything. I didn't go back there.
And that was in the US, right? That was in the US before you moved to China. Okay.
Yeah. This was in the US. I'm actually curious about because there is kind of an eyesight community in China. So I'm kind of curious, kind of what they do here in China. I haven't done that yet, so I'll probably explore that later on. But anyway, so that was kind of where my experience ended. And the most that I got out of that was to not wear my glasses as much. Like I had gotten reduced prescription glasses, and I never went back to my stronger prescription. So I always just had a little bit of blur, and I kind of just was like, this is just how I'm going to see from now on, because I didn't want my eyes to get worse. Years and years and years later, I don't know how I lost my glasses. I lost them somehow, because I was still very used to taking my glasses off when I didn't need them. I lost them. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to improve my eyesight. So I just decided to go all in, and I'm trying to remember how. I think I just Googled Bates method, I forgot exactly what I did, but somehow I found Bates Method online, and I started getting into like the Better Eyesight magazines and started looking up all of the source material from Dr. Bates. And I was like, wow, this stuff is really interesting. And yeah, so after, I think I started doing things on my own for about a year, and I told myself, okay, I'm going to spend a year on it. And if I don't get like really good progress, then I'm going to go on and get a coach or like take a course. So that's what I did. So after a year, I was like, all right, I'm getting some progress, but I'm pretty sure I'm missing something. I didn't know what it was. I felt like I knew everything. You know, you read all of the information, and especially if it's from the source material, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. You know, you read it and intellectually it makes sense. But I was like, I'm missing something. So I, got a coach, and just within the first 10, 20 minutes, I was like, I learned so much. And I was like, okay, wow, like this, I found that missing piece that I hadn't had before, and started doing courses and learning more about it, and just kept continuing. And I'm still here, still doing it.
You did make great progress, but you're not completely at 2020 yet. So what were you, like, in terms of what are the biggest don'ts that you did? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that you made?
The first biggest one I made was after reading the Thomas Quackenbush book, which is why it's you have to be careful reading things, because you might interpret it the wrong way, and then you might end up straining a lot more than what you were doing before if you don't have like proper guidance. So, I learned about shifting, right? I think it's like he would say the motto was like shift, blink, and breathe. And I took shifting very literally, and I would try to move my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to one of my friends, because I'm trying to like convince them about natural eyesight, like, oh, there's a way to improve their eyes. Like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And my friend was like, and I told her, I was like, yeah, you got to move your eyes a lot. And she's like, that looks really painful. And I was like, it shouldn't look painful. So I wondered, like, what am I doing? It's supposed to look like a natural, because it's supposed to be these very rapid shifts, but I was doing these very jerky movements because I was physically moving my eye instead of moving my attention. So reading a lot of books that keep talking about your eyes. I mean, I go back and read all, look at all these books that I have, and it's like your eyes, your eyes, your eyes. And there's so much focus on your physical eyes. And then it says, oh, and forget about your eyes. And I'm like, you just talked about eyes for like 4 or 5 chapters, and now you're telling me to forget about my eyes. So learning to shift my attention instead of moving my eyes, it's kind of the difference of if I were to pick up a cup. I'm not going to sit there and think, all right, I need to open my hand and close it around the cup and pick, you just think, all right, I'm just going to pick up the cup. So, it's good to kind of just see movement. So if I'm looking at a person walking, my attention will naturally follow that person instead of me, okay, my eyes need to be here and then here, like I'm a robot. That's not how we function. So
that's basically what you're saying is, and this is exactly my experience and that of so many of my clients, right? It's doing this thing and working your eyes and exercising them and like shifting them and doing, versus recognizing that it's coming from that state of relaxation and letting things happen, and it's more being than doing. And I know it sounds kind of esoterical, but I agree with you, because instructions in a book, it's really hard, because I have a freebie, people can download, and you do your best to describe. And that's one reason in my free guide that I don't talk about eye movements, because I'm like sunning, sunlight and palming, that's easier, to just, or like splash your face with cold and warm water. But the movements, I think, is the trickiest part to actually convey in writing versus actually seeing it. So that was number one mistake, right? You were working your eyes really hard to kind of do something, and it obviously created probably strain or pain, right, in your eyes.
A lot.
Yeah. So what was the second biggest mistake that you did? And I know we didn't have it, it's not an official countdown, but what is another big mistake that you make or don't?
Another big mistake is if you work with an eye chart standing 20 feet away and like practicing that way. For some people, maybe that's, where it works for them. But well, okay, the first one was not using an eye chart. So I didn't use an eye chart for the first year. I think I used it a little bit because there was a course that I took that it had some eye chart work, but I kind of was like, okay, eye chart work, I did a little bit, that's enough. But when I went back to it, after I had learned how to properly relax, and after I'd learned how to use an eye chart in a relaxed way, I started seeing more measurable progress. And that's probably the first time I started having like actual progress, because I don't know, I feel like the eye chart it gives you more feedback, because you can look out, because what I mostly did is I would just walk around and look at trees. I'd go to parks. I mean, I would walk all day from like sunrise to sunset. And at the end of the day, my results were pretty mediocre because I wasn't really getting much feedback. Like I'd see things clear up, but with an eye chart, it's more precise. So when you do certain things, oh, okay, this helps. And that I need to keep doing this thing. Or if you do a different technique and nothing happens to the chart at all, you're like, all right, I need to give that up. So I think in the beginning, what ends up happening is you do a bunch of different techniques. You don't really know what's helping you. Sometimes you'll do it and you're like, okay, I think I see some progress. And sometimes you're like, well, I think this is helping. So an eye chart would help with that. And then the second one is when you do start using an eye chart, standing way too far away and straining and tensing, like, all right, I'm going to relax and make this clear. And you're putting so much attention on the clarity of that chart instead of the relaxation, instead of what the technique is trying to accomplish, which is you need to ignore clarity. I mean, that's a huge part of what I learned. The most important thing was ignoring trying to make things clear. Just accept that it might be blurry and just be fine with the blur. Don't sit there and think so much about it being clear.
So basically what you're saying is, so you're speaking from a nearsighted perspective. Obviously, anybody listening here that's farsighted, for you, it might be different. But the point is, when you're nearsighted and you stand at 20 feet and you can't even see the big E, what's the point? So you're basically saying the do would be the correct way to do it, would be to go to a distance. I usually recommend, I don't know what you learned or what you're doing, where you can see maybe line 5 or 6 or something where you have, and maybe it's a little blurry, but you have enough data for your brain to actually get that feedback and for you to practice relaxation, and then, using all the different methods the Bates method teaches. So, okay, that's a really good one. I think that was my mistake as a teacher in the beginning, to be honest, because my background is farsightedness. And my wasn't that big. It was like 10 feet, but I would stand people like when I read, it was a very, very green, like rookie teacher, right? I would, people would stand 10 feet away and they said, I don't know, is that an eye chart? And I was like, so, that's a really good example of the don't is like stand too far away, but also not using an eye chart. So an eye chart Bates used that in every session, right? He used an eye chart in every session. So, okay, move on. What else did you do wrong, or what did you learn from that?
One thing I did wrong, I feel like, I don't know if anybody else had this issue, or this might be unique to me, but like paying attention too far away all the time. So it's sort of like, once you learn that, I need to, you learn that your eyes are more relaxed, as a nearsighted person when you're looking further away. So I would go outside and just spend the entire day just looking far. And I would get, a lot of clear flashes far away. But then I started noticing that there was a mental block when I would look at things a little closer, not where obviously where I see things in focus, but like, it was closer. And I was like, why is it like mentally, I felt it was harder to bring this into focus than something further away. And it's almost like you're forcing attention. So kind of like, okay, I need to look. So again, turning it into work, right? I need to look far away. And it's like your eyes almost get stuck. I don't know. I guess I could call it like sticky focus or something. They just get stuck in certain points because you're not allowing them to just be and, kind of be like children and play and go wherever they want to go. You're like, no, you need to look far because, you've only looked at things close. And that's the reason why you have this poor vision, is because you don't look at things far away. So look at only far things. So it's like going to the extreme. So kind of just allowing myself to be more curious. And, for example, I noticed that I avoid faces for some reason. Like when I walk down the street, I avoid looking at people. I don't know if it's like a polite thing, or I feel like it's rude if I kind of look at people. And so I had to give myself permission to look at whatever I want to look at. And that kind of allowed me to start noticing things and, not just forcing my focus all the way in the distance. That's not where it needs to be all the time. That's not where it wants to be. The point is allowing your eyes, your mental state to go where it wants to go.
So just so if I hear that correctly, and this is interesting because I usually teach that too. So when you're nearsighted, you always, you want to see like the horizon clearly, and farsighted people want to read small print in dim light. And I always say, why don't you start with what Bates would call a favorable condition, which set up. So something that's closer up, and then, so that you can feel how it's relaxing, and then you slowly move your focus further out. So you're saying the mistake was that you were focusing only on the distance. And I want to dissect a little bit what you said, because you said something when you worked on the near vision part, right? Even if it got into a little bit of a blur, what did you say? That was a struggle for you because it felt, tell me a little bit more of that. And then the second piece, we're going to come to the faces too. But what did you notice when you were, so the distance was kind of relaxing for you, but you didn't really, because it was so far away, you couldn't really clear things up initially, right? Because it was so far, just like, I saw your Instagram reels, like buildings on the horizon, like, right? So what happened when you were trying to work on your kind of, what you call that, like, exploring or expanding your range of clarity? What happened when you did that?
Well, the issue is that I could clear the things up further away. So that's why it was confusing to me. I was like, well, I don't understand. Why is it so much more relaxing? And it was just like, oh, because now my mental state is connected to far stuff, but it's not connected to everything else.
Oh, I see. You were just stuck in kind of far. And interestingly enough, the eyes are actually relaxed when we look in the distance. From a purely, what you said in the beginning, physical standpoint, right? The eyes are actually in their relaxed state. And the closer we get, the more the accommodative effort, the convergence has to come in. So that's interesting. So for you, the distance, even though it was the blurriest, you had these clear flashes. And so you were kind of almost attached to like just doing that, right? Versus spending any time in other distance. Is that correct?
I think so. I think maybe dopamine rush or something, like, oh, and that's what your goal is, to see far. So you focus on that.
Okay. So, and then the other piece about the faces. So that is interesting to me because I've heard that a lot from my nearsighted clients. That idea that I think there's so many layers to the faces thing because, like you said, it could be, and now you live in China versus the US. So I don't know, maybe that's even culturally different. Like, so when you look at somebody, is it like rude? Is it considered rude? Right. But I also find with the nearsighted people that I work with, there's more of that fear, like, what if I don't recognize them? There's this kind of fear, like I look at them and then I don't recognize them. And then they tell me, you looked at me the other day on the street and you didn't wave, like, what, are you on a high horse now or something, like, so could that be a reason you think, or was it just that you were just so focused on all the way out there horizon level?
I think it's funny because I don't think there's a culture of not looking at people here. At least, I mean, I'm a foreigner in China, so I get stared at all the time. Actually, when I first came to China, I used people staring at me as a way to stare at them because, it was my first time in another country. And I wanted to like see everything. But I don't know. I was kind of thinking about, I was listening to some people talk about kind of the mental side of thinking that if you like not wanting to be seen a little bit, like if maybe, not looking at people is kind of a way to kind of hide myself, because it's like, if I look at somebody, they're more likely to notice me. And also because I'm so noticeable here in China, obviously, that, sometimes I kind of want to be hidden in plain sight, which is impossible. But it could be that because I'm trying, because now that you brought up China versus US, I'm trying to think of when I was in the States. Do I look at faces in the States? I don't know. When I go back, I'm going to have to see if I also.
Yeah, check that. That would be interesting. Okay, so you think it could be just more of being shy or like not actually wanting other people to look at you. So if you looked at, that makes total sense, right? If you look at somebody or smile at them, whatever, there's a way higher likelihood of them engaging with you or maybe even saying something to you or whatever, right? So there's this social level, which is so interesting and connected to vision. So this is getting really interesting. Okay, so is there another mistake that you made, or like a mistake? And then also, what is so to bring this so close? So now you're more paying attention to all kinds of things at all distances. So you're not just exclusively looking at signs on skyscrapers on the horizon, but you're also like, looking at faces, whatever is interesting, right? Okay.
Yeah, working on that. But yeah,
okay.
Because also curiosity of detail was something that was very hard for me. I wouldn't really call this a do or don't. It was just a little tidbit that I would read about details and curiosity to details, and I'd go outside and look around and I'm like, nothing really interests me. So it's, kind of finding what holds your attention. But anyway,
okay, sorry, that's an interesting one. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, so basically, sorry to interrupt you, but when you're saying, so that is because curiosity is the first aspect of our brain engaging and being interested, right? So what was your struggle? You said you couldn't find anything interesting. Was that relating to all distances, or was it especially something that's more close up, or?
I think, well, I guess because I'm mostly doing this stuff while I'm outside, so I'm probably looking kind of further. Maybe if I was looking at something close up, I would find, something a little bit more intriguing. But what I noticed is that, after I do kind of the long swing or more palming, where my eyes are kind of, the actual physical eyes are a little bit more loose and relaxed. I actually noticed this the other day when I finished doing some shifting. I automatically started scanning more, and there was like more curiosity. So I realized like the two are linked. It's not that you can't necessarily force yourself. I think it kind of ties to the idea that when you're like really strained, it's hard for people to like think or imagine something. I feel it's kind of similar. Like if your eyes are still like very locked and tense, it's harder to kind of have that curiosity because it's attached to your mental state as well.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, wow, that is very true and great observation. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so move forward. I'm sorry, go on.
What was the other one? So central fixation, which I don't want to go too much into that because it can be kind of complicated, but just the idea that, you have that really tiny point that's sharpest and everything else is blurrier, or not blurrier, but it's not as sharp. I assumed that point, I think I'm trying to remember, I think I assumed that point was like stagnant, like it didn't move, or like it was very hard to imagine that point moving. And it's sort of like, I don't know, I don't really know how to describe it, but that part was really difficult for me to grasp because I think I would end up kind of like staring at things, trying to like get, oh, okay, I need to, or like trying to see that sharp point, like, looking at something and trying to see, and it's like, that's still doing, it's
right.
Still trying. So a lot of the mistakes I made, it's just trying. I mean, we make an effort to see, we strain to see. So of course, if we're trying to do all of these exercises by ourselves, we're more likely to find a way to strain to do it. So
what helped you with the because center fixation, I remember when I first learned that, I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense, that I can only see the point. And then now that I can see it, I don't even know how I was not noticing that before. But what helped you to relax into that experience? Like what helped you to, because you said you were still staring, you were still making an effort, you were still trying to see that little black dot, whatever, in a black letter or something. Like what helped you to get out of that efforting mode?
So the peripheral vision, so going just more about the peripheral vision and less about that clear point. I feel it's better for some people to work backwards instead of going, all right, let's go straight into central fixation. Because that's actually a question a lot of people ask me all the time. They're like, oh, can you teach me how to do central fixation? And I'm just like, I don't know if you're, I don't know if you're ready for central fixation, because I feel like if you get into it too early, you might just end up staring. And that's the issue with a lot of these techniques, is there should be a progression where you go from, stuff that's easier to do when you're relaxed to stuff that is a little bit more advanced that you do after you understand how to relax properly so you can do it. But yeah, peripheral, definitely, looking at one point, looking away from it and seeing it less clear and coming back to it. That's what helped me get it.
I
And going
think
from
another, another mistake that you kind of hinted at the beginning was the idea of like doing it yourself, right? Not getting a coach and trying to figure all this out from writing. So I think that would really fall into place with exactly all these things that you were describing, because, and again, I can so echo this experience, even though I was farsighted, that kind of efforting of trying to make things happen, right? Versus actually getting the guidance and somebody noticing you and notice that you're not blinking or staring or whatever you're doing, or holding your breath, all these kind of aspects. So are there other mistakes that you think you want to cover, or this was really fruitful discussion so far?
Well, the last one, I guess, holding your breath. Okay. I call this a mistake because I learned how to do deep breathing with my belly. The issue is that after I learned how to do that, I feel like it caused me to strain more, because when I would like walk around, I wasn't breathing properly. I don't know how to explain it. It's like almost I didn't know how to, like I only knew how to breathe like when sitting down or lying down. But if I was in motion or doing anything, I had even more of a tendency to hold my breath, because I was like, oh, I'm not breathing correctly. And so trying to force breathing correctly. So even like, I don't know, a year or so later into, doing my practices, I noticed I'm holding my breath when I'm doing my practices. So it's, just kind of making sure you really, really make sure you're blinking, make sure you're breathing. Like, don't, because if you do a practice for a really long time and you're holding your breath the whole time, you're not really going to get that very deep relaxation that you would get if you understand how to breathe in a more rhythmic way.
So your tip would be what would your tip be in this case? Because is it just becoming more aware, or okay?
No, there's an actual tip for this. What I did is I started syncing the rhythm of my breathing to what I'm doing. So because, before it's just sort of like just have my breath do whatever. But so for example, when I'm walking, it would kind of just be like, if I step 1, 2, breathe in, 1, 2, breathe out. So I started doing that. Like, for example, if I was swinging, I realized that when I'm swinging my breath, and it's not necessarily that I'm holding my breath. It was just my breath was a little erratic. It wasn't, so I just would time it. So, swing, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. So when I started doing that, I started getting a lot more, like everything I did started feeling a lot more relaxing. I started enjoying it a lot more. So kind of just figuring out ways to incorporate, your good habits so that you can enjoy the techniques and you can get relaxation from them, which is the point.
Okay, yeah, that's really wonderful, wonderful tips. So I kind of took some notes as you were talking. So I came like was it 8 tips total, and obviously we can always dissect them more and more. But I think that's definitely echoes what I experience, what I feel like a lot of my clients are experiencing. It really comes down to misunderstanding or thinking intellectually I understand this concept and then making a huge effort. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, which connects to like, really getting a coach, and then using an eye chart, that you just stick on the wall. And I've worked with a client, I think it was one of my very first clients I worked with, who had a -9 diopter and just worked with an eye chart by herself for a year and just didn't see it, was very, very strained, and in a way that was so stressed out about this. So the eye chart is a fantastic tool, right? But you definitely need a coach and you need support. And because the eye chart is what Dr. Bates would call for most people a pessimum, you're already looking at the eye chart, you're already holding your breath. You're like, this is the most stressful thing. Yeah. So, and then really focusing mostly on the distance where your vision is worse, because you so desperately want to, clear that up. And I'm looking at my notes, standing too far from the chart was a really good one. And trying to force yourself to be interested in things versus when you are relaxed, right, when you allow yourself, then you're naturally becoming more interested in things versus like, I have to be interested in things. I have to pay attention to all these things, Again, it's the big thing is doing versus being, really, I think what it boils down to a lot. And then starting with what Bates would call favorable conditions. So if central fixation is hard for you, you explore more the peripheral field and help you to relax. And then you slowly understand that concept. So that's really great. And then I like the rhythm of, using the breath to kind of incorporate that into especially movement techniques or palming or those kind of things where you can just really establish a good breath. I'm looking at YouTube right now. Okay, so yeah, we don't have any questions. We just have some comment. Sun gazing is amazing. Oh, that wasn't really directly related, but yeah, we don't have any questions on YouTube. I found this incredibly interesting. And by the way, so Chaniece, you can share a little bit more about yourself, because I do want to ask you, I found you on Instagram. I don't remember, just like you don't remember, like the rabbit hole of finding things. But I found your Instagram and I was intrigued by your stories, because my background is design, and you made these stories like basically explaining techniques instead of just talking to camera. I was like, wow, like I should be doing these things. I should be doing this. I was like following you, and you have an amazing, the link is, let me see if I can grab that really quick and put it in YouTube, but it's Get Better Eyesight is your handle, correct?
Yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about why you started doing this, what you would call like a chronicle, or doing like a video log, or however you want to share that. But tell us a little bit of why that has become part of your vision improvement journey.
Okay, so when I first learned about all of this stuff, I didn't really have many people to talk to other than my husband. And I don't think he was very happy with me constantly blabbering to him about stuff that he didn't know. Like I'd be like, okay, let me explain central fixation to you. And he's like, oh God. So I actually started doing audio recordings. So I started just recording myself on my phone. So I literally just walk around and talk to myself on the phone. And I'm one of those people where in order for me to really understand something and really grasp something, I need to explain it to somebody else. So I eventually went from that, and I was like, you know what, maybe I can find people on social media. So I went on Facebook and I found a natural vision Facebook page, but it didn't really have the feeling that I wanted, because, I think there was maybe 2 or 3 people sharing their experiences. And I was like, no, I really want to connect to people where I can talk to them about what I'm experiencing. And, we can kind of bounce ideas off each other and help each other out. I really wanted a community. So I went on Instagram, and it looks kind of bleak on there. I had a really hard time finding like coaches like you. It's like whenever I see one, I'm like, yes, follow immediately, because it's just so hard for me to find. And I end up following a lot of people posting in languages that I don't even understand. And I'm like, I'm fine with this. This is what I want. I just wanted a community of people. And so I just decided to just start chronicling my progress. And I think at the beginning I had 10, 11 followers. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 11 other people out there who are also interested in this. And, I would have these long conversations with people, explaining them, stuff that I've learned, and they would explain stuff to me. And I just loved it. That's exactly what I wanted. So and I would have so many people message me like, can you improve your eyesight? Is it possible to improve your eyesight? Can you really do it? And I'm just like, yes, I'm posting every day. You can click in my progress and see, me explaining the differences. And I just didn't have that. I wanted to hear people, for example, talk about the sensations in their eyes. Like, what do you actually feel when it changes? Does it hurt? Do you feel tugging sensations? What exactly is happening? How is the process? Does it just get clear one day? Go from blurry and the next day it's completely clear. So since I didn't have that for me to see, I was like, well, let me just do it myself. And then gradually I found a few other people who are also doing it. So that was the main reason, was just to share and find a community and connect and talk to other people about this stuff.
Yeah, and your Instagram, everybody here, you should follow her. It's, you're doing such a great job, really explaining things with little graphics and pictures, and So I was instantly intrigued because I was like, I would love to do that, but it's a lot of work and you really excel at doing that. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking if there's any, I don't see any other questions. And we have a little powwow here in our Zoom group on my Clear Vision Club community. That's not going to be live streamed. That's in our closed circle. So if you are interested in becoming a member, just send an email to support@myholisticvision. And then make sure, so Chaniece, where else can they follow you? So I posted the Instagram on the YouTube, your Instagram. Is there anywhere else they can follow you? Do you have, what else? Nope.
I mean, I have a website, getbettereyesight.com, but I haven't posted much on that, but I'm going to post on more platforms later, but for now I just want to focus on Instagram.
Right. And if anybody is interested, I know you have a TikTok, but that's focused on your life in China. And so if that's of interest to somebody, that's not about vision improvement, correct? The TikTok is most. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really interesting. And I hope that everybody that listens to this video or watches this replay later gets some ahas from this and maybe some inspiration and maybe, find a coach. And I just want to say, Chaniece and I have never worked together. So that's why I love this conversation even more. So it's not like here I'm showcasing a client, but that idea that you really need help. And that was my own experience too. Like I got so far from a book and understanding certain things and, doing some of these practices, but that there's a point where you don't see you don't see your own blind spots, right? It's kind of, thank you so much for being here. Any last things you want to say?
No, just be consistent. And if you want to do it, go for it. Find someone to help you, find a community, do it.
Thank you. So we will continue our conversation here on